Hello, this is TurboDoc702 doing a submission video here for Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I'm going to be showing off all bosses, all relics, plus Save Richter, or ABRSR. It's one of the more expansive categories, but I'll get into that later. At the very start of this, we start as Richter Belmont. This is a pretty short prologue. A lot of mechanics for Richter, but we don't play him long enough to cover too much of them. The main premise here is we want to try to get 41 hearts before the fight with Dracula. That'll get us access to a couple of items. We want to defeat Dracula in under a minute, which will improve our stats at the beginning of the game. And we want to end with 0 hearts. Ending with 0 hearts will make it so that we get access to a heart refresh. Here we're trying to get damage stacks on Dracula by doing the Hydra Storm and throwing a holy water after. Sometimes you can get the game to register hits of Holy Water as Hydra Storm hits, basically, and it does lots of damage, kills Drac very quickly there. But now we're getting into the main portion of the game, which is the Alucard section. So, Alucard has a bunch of different ways of moving. One of these, if you press the top button, it's either triangle or Y, depending on your version. It does a backdash. Backdashing is itself faster than normal running. But what was found is that if you flick out your shield or other select weapons, you can actually cut down the recovery of backdash, so you get the fastest part of it at the beginning. And that's called shield dashing. And that's basically what you're seeing when I'm sliding against the ground there. It's just repeatedly pressing backdash and shield in a rhythm. We are killing specific enemies at the beginning there because we're trying to manipulate our experience. The reason for that is the death skip, which is coming up here. Using the neutron bomb, which we got from our 41 hearts on the original Drac fight, we're going to be killing this warg on a very specific placement of the camera on this screen. And that's going to make it so that we trick the game into allowing us into zoning into the next screen on the opposite side. So on that screen that just flickered for a moment, that's the death cutscene. We spawned on the right side of the screen rather than on the left side. And that allows us to skip over the death cutscene, which keeps all of our super powerful Alucard gear and allows us to continue on with the game. Grabbing the Cube of Zoe here. Cube of Zoe is still important. That allows items to appear when you break candles and torches and such. It's also important for this category as it is a relic. Currently capturing this off of a VOD that I have from YouTube. Apparently my local recording is lost in the catacombs of my computer, so I do apologize about that. We're currently playing on the Xbox Live Arcade version of SotN. It's the fastest version of SotN known right now for most categories of the game. Presents way less graphical lag than the original versions. And loads faster. Even in between the little screens, like loading each individual screen, it's a little quicker. And that adds up over the course of longer runs. So we're coming up to the first boss, which is Slogger and Gaibon. Nice Castlevania 4 alumni. They're pretty easily taken out with the Alucard gear. You're going to see us kind of cause Slogger to get picked up by Gaibon, and then we just use jumping attacks to finish them off. Ideally, you would want to kill both of the enemies so that you got the experience stacked on both of them, for lack of a better term. When you gain level ups in this game, the screen freezes for about 1.5 seconds, and you'll see one right here. Yeah, there we go. And one of the big goals of the game at a very high level is to try to reduce the amount of level ups and general animations you get, and that allows you to reduce the amount of time that you're not active in the game. So for Slogger and Gaibon, if we had killed them both at the same time, we would have stacked level ups in such a way that we wouldn't have gotten that level up on the Bloody Zombie. So just continuing to shield dash, we're going to be making our way to the Maria cutscene in the clock room. But first, for ABRSR, we're going to take a detour dropping down into the Marble Gallery. Down here is the Spirit Orb. And we're actually still trying to kill kind of specific enemies in order to manipulate our experience for level ups. Originally, I picked up the Spirit Orb way later, but Romscott had made the suggestion that perhaps we should pick it up early. If your Clock Rush is decent enough, you can pick up the Spirit Orb, and even if you don't make a sub-8 Clock Rush, you are still saving time inherently, as long as the rest of your Clock Rush does well. And I think I save a little bit of time on this one. But I digress. We're going to be coming to the clock room with Maria in it. I mentioned the clock rush. So there is an artificial cap on the speed that you can kind of complete the first part of the game. And that's this room. This room opens on even minutes and closes on odd minutes. Currently, the fastest time to be able to get to it is at the 8-minute mark with what you need. The first part of the game really relies on getting access to the wolf transformation and returning to that room, so you gain access to the Colosseum much earlier than intended. So right now we're just making our way over to the outer wall to get wolf and then return there. In that previous room we picked up the stopwatch. Stopwatch is useful for the next boss that we're going to be fighting, Doppelganger 10, which I'll cover when we get to him. Here we have Diplocephuluses. We can just jump over them. Important that you hold your shield out here, because if they shoot their fireball at the wrong time, they could hit you, and the fireball will stop that. A very long hallway here. It's here that most people that are more or less familiar with the game that try the speedrun tend to get very fatigued on their arms. It's a lot of shield dashing, and we're going to be hitting that room again on the way back as well. So definitely a point of fatigue for a lot of players. So we end up jumping over these knights. We also jumped over the Diplocephuluses, but you can kill them if you do get the double kill on Slagergaibon, which is another kind of benefit of getting that double kill, but not particularly necessary. This is Doppelganger 10. The stopwatch, as mentioned, Doppelganger 10 is actually completely susceptible to it. Doppelganger 10 is one of 2 bosses that is completely stopped by the stopwatch, and that allows for a quick kill here. The other one being Doppelganger 40, which will be later on in the run. Normally, bosses only get slowed down, or they don't even have any effect done to them. So the outer wall is a perfect example of why shield dashing isn't necessarily the end-all be-all of the run. A lot of the clock rush really does come down to just consistent shield dashing rather than trying to go blazing fast. Just reducing the amount of stutters you have and making really good jumps and transitional movement. And outer wall is a place where you can definitely see the difference between players in these regards. There I try for a small clip that drops through the floor there. Didn't quite get it, but that's okay. It only saves about 2 seconds. So now that we have access to the wolf, we're going to make our way back towards the clock room to gain access to the Colosseum. Here we're going to go ahead and use the wolf's skewed jumping mechanics on slopes to be able to get on top there. I unfortunately miss it. That's a rather rare miss for me, but it did happen to happen there. And we pick up the garnet. The garnet's going to be important for later on when we use a item duplication technique to gain arbitrarily high amounts of money to buy things from the shop. So speaking more about some of the mechanics of the wolf, as we're going to be using it here momentarily, the wolf has the ability to run, which, while slower than shield dashing at very high speeds, the nice thing about the wolf is that when you jump while running, you maintain your forward momentum. If you're doing the shield dashing, once you need to jump up on a step or something, you lose a lot of momentum at that point, while the wolf, as you can see, just jumps over it. Another skewed wolf jumping mechanic there to jump the large portion of stairs. The wolf has some really weird mechanics for jumping whenever you're going up or down a slope. So here I'm going to go for a tight jump, and I get actually a pretty good version of it where you get the damage boost going left over him and get into human form. Ideally, you do want to stay in wolf form so that you can skip out this transformation here, but that happens. So the reason that works is whenever you get a transformation and you untransform, you're able to dive kick, and the dive kick kind of jumps off at the candle there and allows you to enter the Olroc's quarters much earlier than intended. Normally you would need to have access to the leap stone in order to have double jump, and that would allow you to get dive kicks, but using the untransform, we bypass that. So we're making our way over to the next section of bosses here. Minotaur Werewolf. Minotaur Werewolf is kind of an interesting fight. This room, we want to kill that Blade Master for experience, but the rest of these we can manipulate to jump over us. And we continue on. And we're going to go to Minotaur and Werewolf. So Minotaur and Werewolf is interesting in that if you skip the cutscene like I'm going to do here, their AI doesn't activate, and you can kind of wail on them until they die. If you didn't do that, then they would wait until the end of the cutscene with Richter, and then they would start activating. But when you skip it, they wait until the cutscene would have ended. So we're going to grab the Form of Mist and make a detour here. The detour is to get access to the Shield Rod, which is a very, very powerful piece of equipment. It allows shield-specific spells for each shield. This is a strategy that I kind of developed as a safeguard for marathons in order to get the Shield Rod. I didn't execute it perfectly, but it still served its purpose for getting me to the Shield Rod while taking minimum mana. There is a better strategy for that using Soul Steel, but it eats a lot of mana, and this is the part that I hedge my bets for this. So we're going to use a Wolf Jump to get access to the Fairy card way earlier than intended and use that for the Shove duplication. And this is the exact reason I do this, is if I had done the Soul Steel strat and that happened, I would have had an instant reset because I would have had no real mana to try this again. But with that safety strat that I kind of developed, it allows me to have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 attempts at this book jump before I am out of mana and can't progress. You can choose to take a different route if you do run out of mana, but it costs a lot of time, and you've already spent so much time missing the book jump that it's pretty crippling. So we're going to use the Fairy's summoning feature. And her audio cue when she gets summoned is going to allow us to break the scene here with the Librarian, and that lets us pause in the shop menu. Doing that, we are going to sell a garnet that the game doesn't think we have in our inventory, and that's going to underflow our garnets to 255. You could repeat this, as I mentioned, to get an arbitrarily large amount of money. Pick up the Jewel of Open because it's a relic. We pick up the Elixir and Mana Prism, a couple Buffalo Stars, and a Duplicator. The Duplicator is an item that allows you to use consumables without consuming them. We pick up a Buffalo Star because it is a far-reaching consumable weapon, so it does lots of damage, goes across the screen, and can replace our shield for Buffalo Star dashing for a short time. We pick up the Mana Prism because on use, the Mana Prism gives you a full mana bar and gives you invincibility, as showcased here. Many items on use give that invincibility, but we really, really want the mana for just a little bit when we get access to that. This is Lesser Demon. Pay no attention to him. He's marked as a boss, but he really isn't, as we can see. Nice use of the wolf here to, again, kind of avoid hopping up these little steps and keeping forward momentum. So we're going to get access to the bat and use Library Card, which is one of the other items that we got. Library Card immediately returns you to the Master Librarian. The other item that we got is an Elixir. Elixir is just a safety measure that allows us to make sure that we can complete the route. So unfortunately, I don't have the best library escape here, but it is showcasing one of the most used tech inside of SotN besides shield dashing, which is wing smashing. So when you see that kind of blue dashing animation with the bat, that's a wing smash. And it's very, very fast. It does damage when it goes through enemies, but it's also invincible. You do have some directional control of it going up and down. And you also have the ability to use Mist to break your momentum like you're seeing here. And that allows you to kind of stop on a dime and quickly reposition if you need to. So something that's important to note about Wing Smash that you're going to kind of see here coming up is that if you repeat the special spell motion for it, within about 60 frames or so, you can continuously do Wing Smash. There is a caveat to this in that you need mana for each individual instance of Wing Smash that you use. So because of that, the Mana Prism gets used quite a bit. And it is important to kind of manage your mana in certain areas to make sure you have enough to complete a room. So this is a pretty interesting damage boost we're going to take here. We're going to bounce off of the upper half of the Harpy here to land on the moving gear, and then use that to actually cut out about 2 to 3 seconds of travel time inside that room. This is a pretty tricky wing smash area. I hedged my bets on a safe option because I didn't feel like my hands were in the right position to execute the best strategy. This is Karasamon, very quickly taken out by Buffalo Stars. And we're kind of moving on. We're going to be moving towards the Leapstone. Leapstone is an item that allows you to get double jump and dive kick, and gains you access to bat kicking, which, if you've seen before, sometimes I'll do a backdash into bat. That's called bat dashing. And the interesting thing to note about bat kicking and bat dashing is that the bat tends to want to preserve your horizontal momentum. And as a result of that, you can carry over some of that horizontal momentum into a transformation as you're doing transitional movement. And then you can take that into wing smashes like I just did there. So we're going to be making our way over to Hippogriff, which is going to be the next boss. As you can see, the bosses aren't really the real draw here, right? It's the amount of movement options and optimizations therein. There's a lot of very, very fancy and interesting movement that you can do inside of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and it's showcased really well in the more expansive categories like All Bosses and ABRSR. So we're going to make our way down to the bottom of the Royal Chapel here, and we're going to equip the Shield Rod and begin our first casting of the Shield Rod spell. We are going to use this casting to not only activate the Shield Rod, but also skip over a statue in the next room over using a screen skip glitch that you're going to see here. That allows us to bypass the statue that would normally be blocking us, and we have activated the Alucard Shield as well. So the Alucard Shield's Shield Rod spell makes it so that it does 255 damage every 6 frames, I believe it is, that it's inside of an enemy. So you're talking about 10 times a second at 255 damage, so lots of damage there. It also drains health as a result of that and gives you hearts. So it's one of the best casual weapons in the game, and still one of the best like kind of higher end weapons as well. This is Olrox. A nice thing about the shield, or the Alucard Shield spell as well, is that when it's activated, it gives you invincibility. So I can kind of like stand inside of him. I do use a Mana Prism in order to get some initial invincibility before the first tick of Alucard Shield happens. And we're going to go ahead and pick up our next relic over here. So I guess I should kind of qualify. So there's all bosses, and there's any percent, and there's glitchless. So what's the big draw about ABRSR? Well, there's not a lot of people that have even done runs of ABRSR, at least not by that definition. Without getting too much into it, I had basically seen a guy submit to GDQ for this category, and I had never seen the guy's name before, and his time looked kind of weird for what he was accomplishing. So I was like, I wonder how difficult this would be to actually route. This is an attempt at a clip here, by the way. And we actually do not quite get it. It clips us back inbounds at the last minute, which is unfortunate. But as I was saying, I was like, I wonder if I can route this out and get a better time. And sure enough, I mean, I routed it out in about 5 minutes and smashed the time by like 20 minutes. But it also got me really interested in maybe exploring the category more, and I've made more adjustments since then to drop the time considerably more. And there's still time on the table. It's just there's a lot to execute in this game. So we pick up the gravity boots there, which gains us access to a super jump. The bat's very good at moving side to side, but not so much up and down specifically, so the gravity boots helps with that. This is a setup that allows us to clip into the floor here using the Wolf's transformation and enter the chamber with Maria way, way earlier than intended. Normally you'd have to go all across the castle picking up multiple items in order to get the gold and silver rings. That would open up the bottom of the clock room and gain you access to this chamber, but we bypass all that. So about wolf clipping. So the reason wolf clipping works is when you untransform from the wolf, your collision box is skewed for like a frame as you untransform. So as long as you're in the very, very precise positioning and with a very, very precise timing, you can clip into many sloped surfaces using the wolf. Not quite all of them, but many of them. It gets easier and easier as you move faster and faster. So here we have another library escape. This one went considerably better than the previous one. And this is all about getting tools. You know, as we get more and more tools, our ability to traverse the castle gets better and better. So this is kind of the part where it really starts to take a stark difference from all bosses. Normally when we do the clip into the staircase, we would be going into underground caverns. But since there's more relics to pick up, we take a more circuitous route around the castle. In this case, we are going to be backtracking in order to get access to the 2 wolf relics related to run speed. And we're going to be entering the underground cavern from a different route. That blue streak headed upward that you just saw, and will be seen very shortly, is the gravity boots that I had spoke about. Interesting thing about the gravity boots is you can go diagonally, which you'll see here. And when you go diagonally, it does give you horizontal properties. So because of that, the bat gets those same skewed momentum physics using the gravity boot. And that allows you to cut some really interesting and weird angles as you go through the castle. So nice showing of gravity boot strength of ascending up staircases. That room went almost perfectly. That room's actually really difficult to do at this point in the game. The only way it could have went better is if I had gotten the diagonal gravity boot that I had wanted into a gravity bat. Shoutouts to Realm Scout for suggesting this route improvement as well. Normally I would library card out there, but because he showed me this, you can actually wing smash through this elevator bottom. And that allows you to bypass taking the elevator all the way to the bottom here, which is a pretty significant time gain. Pay no attention to my splits, by the way. They're more reminders than anything else to me. SotN has a lot of relics, and obviously if you forget even one of them, your run is invalidated for this category. So very important to kind of keep track of what you picked up and make sure that you don't forget any of the items. It's actually a much tighter room than you would expect. The 2 zombies are placed at kind of a weird position for bypassing them. So we're making our way back to the beginning of the castle to pick up the 2nd wolf relic. So we're at like the other side of the castle, and I mentioned that we're going to hit the underground caverns from here. Now, if you played SotN casually, you might recall that there is a door that opens up that leads to the underground caverns. However, the switch to open it up is on the opposite side of the door, which makes that kind of difficult to deal with. Nice use of the wolf relics here to do extra speed running in order to go across here. Using a technique similar to the death skip, we are going to be skipping over the screen once again to enter from the opposite side of the screen, though. This is called the reverse shift line, is the basic principle of it, and it's used in multiple places. And using that, we end up on the right side of the screen rather than the left side, and that allows us to bypass that switch and enter the caverns from this direction. So here we're going to say hi to the ferryman, but leave him behind as he is quite slow at rowing compared to wing smashing. Pick up the merman statue, as it is necessary as a relic, and it's necessary in order to gain access to one of the other items. We're going to be using the gravity boots here to ascend. So this is an interesting thing. We're going to spawn Donkey Kongs in order to break the wooden planks in a couple places inside of the underground caverns. This isn't necessarily the fastest way, but it is definitely the safest and most consistent. Because we have access to lots of wolf relics, We could technically go underwater and perform a slope clip and then very carefully make our way underneath this plank rather than leading this Donkey Kong over here to break it. But that would take a lot of effort. So it's much easier to just let Donkey Kong break it. And even though we're conceding maybe 10 seconds or something, those 10 seconds are hard to get. And if you miss it at all, you're losing like 20. We're using Soul Steel to break the floor here because we actually don't have access to a weapon that can swing downwards and break the floor. So this is why we pick up the Merman statue first, specifically. Merman statue allows the ferryman to show up here. And we need him to be here because if we didn't take this boat and make him row this whole way, there's a door at the far end of this cavern that bars our progress, and only when the boat is in a certain range are you able to progress from there. Notice that the boat has a hole in it, which is why I fell through earlier. It's actually not true, it's just collision bugs. There's the door I was referring to. So this is a really tight wing smash. I do not remember how well I hit it inside of this PB. But, so one of the biggest things is people see a lot of fancy things with the wing smash and think, like, wow, that looks really flashy and cool. These are the type of things that, like, super advanced SotN players kind of enjoy, is something like that. I kind of dropped the wing smash at a couple places, unfortunately, but that is a very, very tight window to get in there. If I hit the ground, or if I hit the water, or if I hit the top of the cavern, then I untransform. So it's a very tight positioning. This is Scylla. She is another boss. We are going to be using the Buffalo Stars to kill her somewhat off screen. This is going to mess up kind of like a sprite overflow and the sprite loading of the door at the left side of the screen. We're then going to use that door as it's spawning to push us down underneath and out of the cavern faster. That way we bypass having to go through a couple of rooms. And that's the Scylla skip. We're now making our way up to Succubus, which normally you would do before all these bosses, for all bosses. I'm going for a floor clip here, and unfortunately I don't get it. That floor clip would allow you to go under the ground and access Succubus without this platforming. Only worth going for once, but still worth giving it a shot. This is the Succubus fight. Kind of trivialized again. Most of these fights are trivialized just by Buffalo Stars or by the Alucard shield spell. Boop. Alright. So we go ahead and kind of wing smash out of here. This is some pretty interesting movement that you can do inside of this escape. Another kind of advanced room at very high levels. Like, some of the funnest rooms in this game for me are the ones where it takes like a huge amount of precision that a lot of players wouldn't necessarily pick up on, or places where you get access to a lot of different forms of movement. Like, whenever I get to use wing smashing, gravity boots, dive kicking, like all in the same room, it's a pretty big win for me. So now we're going to make our way to the bottom of the castle, kind of clean up the last few things. Cerberus and Granfloon are going to be the last two bosses, and we're going to have a couple relics to pick up as well, like the demon card at the bottom here. Demon card's one of those relics that I talk about where I really want the split for on my splits just to remind me to pick it up. I actually really like this strategy for dealing with the Imp room. Unfortunately, I missed the dive kick there, but if I had made that, that actually gets through that room without taking any hits. That's a rather newer strat that I had developed at the time of this PB, so it's not surprising that I had made the mistake of it that time. So there is a clip you could do in that previous room using the Wolf Relic. I decide against it, though. just because my wolf clipping hasn't been doing great to begin with, so I didn't want to kind of risk it. This is also quite fast, if you're able to kind of use the wolf's run speed to facilitate a transformation into bat, and then stop. That's another kind of quick way of getting through catacombs, using the extra relics to create a speed advantage. So after killing Granfaloon actually doesn't protect any relics, so we can just library card out. We're going to pick up a fairy scroll, which we have left in the library for a really long time. Maybe some of you thought I forgot about it. I did not. I just waited until we had more tools available. That way we can kind of get out of this room more quickly. And I mean, at this point, we're pretty much done with the first castle. That was actually the correct move to move forward there rather than wing smashing with the bat. Because I had taken the hit, I wouldn't have gotten anything from increasing my speed by taking more time to do a wing smash. Sometimes it's not always about what the perfect movement is. It's also adapting when your movement has issues and understanding that your positioning has had a snag hit it. So what's the best way to kind of leap over to the next section? We're going to be taking the teleporter up to the top of the castle. And there we're going to get access to the Power of Mist. Power of Mist is actually another interesting trade inside of ABRSR. Power of Mist allows your mist form to move and continue to move indefinitely. It takes a lot of mana to move in mist form, but what's interesting about it is it makes it so that when you mist a bat, you can actually move a considerable portion of height or length, and that's going to become quite relevant in the reverse outer wall. So we aren't switching up our familiars because even though there are better familiars than the fairy, it really doesn't matter. The familiars aren't going to do nearly enough damage to stop us. Here I make sure that I have Holy Glasses equipped before fighting Richter. We do a sequence using Summon Spirit and Soul Steel to kill the green Shaft Orb before Richter even really activates. You do not want Richter getting out of control, because even if you have all this super powerful armor and stuff, you're still a fairly low level, and Richter does a lot of damage. So you do not want him running around and hitting you. So now that we've gotten to the second castle, the cutscene that we skipped has actually turned off our Shield Rod spell. So we do need to recast that. I had a little bit of trouble with the menuing here. As mentioned, the menuing and some other things are quite different from other categories inside of SotN, so sometimes it can be hard to get your bearings in a menu that you don't see as much. Nice little use of the bat transformation to bypass the ceiling tile there. Nice use of the horizontal gravity boot into bat as well, like earlier. So entering Darkwing Bat. Darkwing Bat is another boss. Follows a specific pattern at the beginning of the fight, which is why I move into this corner, because I know he's going to be there. Very important to pick up the relics after boss fights, because if you don't, then you haven't picked up all the relics. It's actually one of the few mistakes I've made outside of a couple of other relics is I have forgotten one of the boss relics before, but now that I've done it once, I probably won't do it again. Normally in all bosses, you would be skipping the relics because we do not need them to complete the game while killing all the bosses. Nice little use of Gravity Boot's invincibility while going up there to bypass some Cloak Knights. It's another room that's pretty severe wing smashing that you got to get used to. I dropped that wing smash on purpose, actually, because that next room, if you hug the roof, you kind of shoot off in an odd angle. So here, unfortunately, I missed the diagonal gravity bat, but this section actually goes pretty well. Nice use of the moving mist to be able to gain small quantities of height to get to the roof faster. Something that I haven't mentioned is that the bat can use terrain to kind of gain boosts and momentum one way or another. So you're seeing me kind of hug these stairs in order to get more upward angle than I normally would with a wing smash. This is the creature who has met the shield. And I have taken the tooth. So now we're just making our way over to Doppel 40. So the second castle goes considerably faster than the first castle. And the reason for that is the big things that gate off SotN progression are height and just general power. And if we get rid of the general power thing, then it's really height that becomes an issue. And since we already have access to bat and gravity boots coming into the second castle, the whole castle is really open to us at this point. So since we have infinite mana, we have wing smash, we have gravity boots, like we can traverse this castle extremely quickly. So this is actually really solid movement. Yeah, that room is... I actually spent quite a bit of time on that room just before this attempt, because this room has some really, really cool movement, and it was a big change from what I originally had done in that room. So I'm glad that it kind of paid off. Didn't do so well in the gravity boot section, but that happens. So this is Doppel 40. As mentioned, Doppel is susceptible to stopwatch, so that's how we get away with that. You do need to wait for Doppel to move first, though, or else he is invincible. And you can't hit him even when he's stopped in the frozen time. So once again, using Soul Steel to break the roof there, since we don't have a way to break it ourselves without it. Another tight wing smash here. I remember this one going kind of poorly, but maybe the... yeah. I was going to say maybe my PB will prove me wrong, but it did not. Yeah, some days you get really on with that wing smash, and then other times, like, you can't help but, like, miss 2 wing smashes here or there, or be a little... because, I mean, it's... not only are you executing the wing smash, but you also have to be at just the right height and maintain your height. It's pretty difficult to wing smash in almost a purely straight line, believe it or not. The wing smash motion itself, when you're in bat form, it's like a 3/4 circle, or a 360, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish with it. If I'm trying to go straight, or if I'm trying to go in a direction, I will either do a 3/4 motion or a full 360. So constantly doing 360s with an input reader that's very picky. I wouldn't say the SotN input reader is bad for accuracy, but it is bad in that its intuitiveness is not there. Very different way SotN expects you to do a input than a fighting game, for example. This is the Death fight. So Death didn't steal our items, and he's definitely not going to steal our life here, because Alucard Shield just does total work. Nice little room here. Talic Zealot, I think, was the one that worked out a pattern for this room that works out pretty well, and it actually gets even better in ABRSR because of your ability to do that. I kind of made a little mistake in my motion at the miss there at the top, but that's a really, really cool room now. I really like the way that that works out. This room I didn't do so hot in. Just a lot of complex movement happening there and interaction between the tiny pieces of rock there that you have to avoid. That mist is on purpose. It's actually faster than bonking on the ceiling. But yeah, just tons and tons of really complex and interesting movement are the sell of any extensive SotN category, I feel. And even like the less extensive ones like any percent. I am going to be submitting glitchless as well for this. I think that's a pretty strong category as well, and more in tune with RPG Limit Break as well, I think. RPG Limit Break tends to want more extensive categories for action RPG styles, I feel. I think ABRSR suits that pretty well. I'm also going to be submitting all bosses, and as I mentioned, glitchless. Glitchless would have a little bit more of an emphasis on combat and danger. Glitchless wouldn't get access to some of the powerful weapons and armor that I have right now, but it's still very much a movement-oriented category as well in-game. Pick up Gas Cloud. Gas Cloud allows your mist to deal damage. You get that sweet fart gas power. And we make our way from Galamoth. Now that we've cleared out this section of the castle, we need to make our way backwards in order to hit a teleporter to kind of get more to the now bottom of the castle in this version of the castle. But the reverse castle keep we need to return to. And that's because although we have cleared the bottom of the castle and the left side, we have not cleared the right side, which includes like Akmodon and Medusa. So nice movement that you can do inside of this room. I was off by just a tiny bit on that dive kick. My intent there is to dive kick down and then either just barely miss the plant or take a damage boost from a plant in order to move me further down the section. As far as I know, that's the fastest way to take that room, but I'm not necessarily convinced that it's the most consistent at this point, but I still do it anyway because, I don't know, I think it looks really cool when you actually get it to work. That is a mistake that can happen. Yeah, and I do it again. I actually was probably pretty tilted from doing it the first time and just angry. But, so because you want to constantly transition to, like, backdashes oftentimes out of doors, sometimes you will accidentally walk back through doors, which is what happened there. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure you can see that there are places that this route can be improved, but again, there's a lot of things that need to go kind of well for you for inputs. A lot of focus. But we're going to be making our way over here, which is going to send us to the Reverse Coliseum, where we're going to have a nice little CV3 reunion. Alucard, originally from Castlevania 3, one of Half Balmondo's secret allies. Or maybe if you know him from his US name, Trevor. But before we do that, we're going to head to Akmodon and kind of clear him out. Akmodon's interesting that his hitbox is fairly backloaded, so you saw me go behind him, and that's so that I get a better chance of hitting him with my Alucard shield. Forgone Moost, one of the prominent taskers of this game, well known for his anger towards Akmodon and getting him to be manipulated well. But, so now we're going to be making our way to the Coliseum. This is actually a route change that was suggested by PKSL. We used to go to the left and then go up, but by going to the right here, we can actually backtrack fairly faster this way, just using some of the more advanced movement tech. We still have to make our way up the Imp Room. So this is a very dangerous room for newcomers. A lot of damage on the table for them to take. So we're going to make our way over to the triplets fight. I already mentioned Trevor Belmont, but he's also joined by Grant and Sypha, or rather reanimated corpses that are meant to mimic them. We take down Grant first, as we can kind of move into the other characters by doing so. Kind of quickly kill him off. Missed a single hit on Trevor, so I had to back up a little bit, but that's fine. Turns out that Alucard was the best character in that game to begin with. It's actually not true at all, it's actually Grant. That's why his time's the fastest. Really long staircase here. This room lags like crazy on PlayStation, but on Xbox it's pretty easy to deal with. That room went almost perfectly, which is nice. Interesting thing about blue doors, you can buffer an input while they're opening, as I do here. Buffer the bat, go through, manage to get past. This Beelzebub strat is Talag Zealots, but I mess it up, unfortunately. This is one of the few strats that I feel like I never get. But you're supposed to wing smash into him, hold your shield out, and then kind of use a double jump dive kick to be able to bounce back into him and kill him instantly. Unfortunately, I haven't worked on that strategy enough to kind of have it in my back pocket, but I always try for it every time that I can. Which is important, you know, it's a building process, learning strategies for any game. And you don't learn things by avoiding them, so we've now killed off all the bosses, and we have all of our relics, so now we get to open up the door to Dracula, right? Well, actually, it's still better to do the relic skip, because even though we have the relics we need, the animation of the door opening using the relics is still pretty extensive. So we're going to use that same reverse shift line, RSL, to zone in from the left side of the screen here. However, since there's a wall on the left side, we get pushed downward into this final hall. By turning into a bat at a precise time, we end up in the roof, and we can wing smash across here and enter the final save. And that bypasses that huge animation that I was talking about to open up the door. Coming up on the end of the run here, we're going to have Shaft and Dracula to go through. A lot of cool things happening inside of this run. Lots of things that I think need to get explored more from the community at large. I know that Dragon Blitz has expressed an interest in perhaps looking into this category, and I look forward to that as well. Time is going to be on the final hit of Dracula. But hopefully this has been an interesting look at ABRSR for those of you on the committee. And yeah, I'm going to get on to kind of getting some of these other submission videos done. Hopefully I'll get one done for Glitchless, or at least post a video. But that's another category that I think is perhaps a reasonable fit for RPG Limit Break. That's kind of up for you guys to decide if SotN is RPG enough